Lesson 10, Incentive Compensation. About 60% of the people that take this course are either sales associates or people who want to become sales associates. And this will be your favorite course because it's all about how you get paid. The most important thing to start off with is principles of fairness. Whenever you devise a compensation program, you want the program to be clear and simple so everyone can understand it. And you want to be consistent throughout the pay cycle. There's nothing worse than having an incentive program and then changing the rules halfway through. All it's going to do is make people upset and angry. Sales is a meritocracy, meaning that if you are more talented and you work harder, you're going to get paid more money. You want to be a sales associate, you have to understand that. So if you're more comfortable being in a non-sales role in a pharma company, that's great. But if you're going to try to be a sales associate or you are one, understand that the harder you work and the more talented you are, the more you will make. An incentive program should avoid all appearances of favoritism. Large territories versus small territories, for example. A sales associate in New York City should not automatically make more money than a sales associate in Boise, Idaho, simply because New York has a larger population than Boise does. The reason being you have to have your metrics set up in such a way where either rep has the ability to max out their cap or go above their cap, their compensation cap, based upon how good they are. A high-writing customer should not all be located in a single territory. The targeting alignment group will make sure that they're spread out. So therefore, we start with a playing field that's equal going in, but you have the ability as a sales associate to go and really, really do well if you are aggressive and you're smart. An incentive program should ensure that your sales associates are happy. You pay a lot of money to train sales associates. You want to retain those associates. You don't want them taking your training and then jumping ship and going to another company. So you want to make sure they're happy. You also want to attract new talent with your incentive compensation program. So retain associates and attract new associates. Base salary is a guaranteed salary plus perks. I'm sure most of you know that. Mass market reps in this example make about $50K a year plus a company vehicle. Specialty reps make about $60K a year plus company vehicle. Now, these numbers differ from various parts of the country. Also depends upon who's available in the employee pool as well. Who's available out there who wants to be hired as a rep, who's changing jobs and things like that. It's important to understand that sales associates in the pharma industry usually do not get the job right out of college. So they have to graduate from school and they'll go work for a software company, an insurance company selling there, and then they can apply for a pharma job. It's not always the case, but it usually is because the pharma rep is a very, very specialized sales associate. Base compensation is usually higher in the pharma industry than other industries, and this is due to many factors. A pharma rep's job complexity is much harder than if you were selling paper or software or anything else. You have to be trained a lot more in what you're selling and really understand the market. I mean, you're promoting, you're selling to doctors, some of the most educated people on the planet, some of the smartest people on the planet. So you really have to know what you're doing. So because there's so much training involved, they want to keep your base compensation high because you are out of the field a lot of days for training, and therefore they don't want to penalize you because you're in training. And one of the most important factors is the potential liability that a sales associate brings to the company. If the associate is not properly trained or the associate makes a mistake and promotes a product off-label or makes another mistake in their sales presentation to an HCP, a healthcare provider, it can cost the company millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars. Incentive compensation, otherwise known as incentive comp. Sales associates can double or triple their salaries through their company's incentive program, and this is called a commission. So you have your base salary plus your commission. Some companies have an incentive cap, which is not normally a nice thing to have because that maxes out what an associate can make from selling. And if you have that in place, once the associate hits that cap, they have no need to work any harder because they can't get paid anymore. So there's no incentive, there's no drive to make them work harder. Incentives are directly tied to the associate's performance. Like we said before about the meritocracy. You want more incentives, you want more money, then you have to work harder and be more talented. Performance can be measured in many ways, including sustaining or increasing the sales volume within your territory, bringing on new customers, new healthcare providers, and having them write your product, HCPs prescribing your product to new patients, new RX versus TRX, as we've talked about before, performing better against the previous time period or a baseline, that's goal setting, staying current on all training materials and subject matter, and finally attending train the trainer sessions where you may become the data champion for your specific district, which means the other associates would look to you with any questions or comments or concerns about the data, and you would be the most knowledgeable person, the data expert for your specific district. Incentive cycles or periods. Incentive cycles are usually based upon trimesters or quarters, and associates are measured based on how they do one cycle versus a previous cycle. We talked about the targeting and alignment lesson previously, and in that lesson we discussed how you set up your targeting window based upon a quarter or a trimester, and incentives is based on that targeting window. Associates selling seasonal products may be measured on the same period in the previous year. So you may have a product that's not seasonal and you look at January, February, March versus May, June, and July, or you may look at January, February, March of this year versus the same time period last year. And finally, incentive cycle metrics, which include year, trimester, quarter, and month-to-date activity. Incentive grade data. Pharma companies purchase a lot of sales data and spend a lot of money on it. Data collected during a shorter time period is more volatile than data collected over a longer time period, because as we talked about in the RX chapter, in the prescription chapter, a lot of data is projected and not captured completely. There's a projection methodology. So anytime you have a projection methodology, if you have a longer period of time to collect the data, your methodology is going to be more accurate. A shorter period of time, it's more volatile. Incentive reports are issued at the end of the incentive cycle. Now, there may be intermittent incentive reports during the cycle, so you can see how you're doing, but the final incentive report based upon what you're going to be paid on is at the end of the cycle. Monthly total RX and new RX data is used as the indicator of how well a sales associate is tracking toward goal or growing their business. You don't want to look at weekly data because weekly data, again, is volatile. So monthly TRX and NRX is usually the indicator of how well an associate's doing. Monthly sales reporting acts as a barometer as to how well the associate is performing month over month. Properly reporting and publishing incentive goals and raw numbers is extremely important. You want to be consistent. It's no good to have data changes month over month. So if I publish a report in February and I'm changing the numbers in January, all that's going to do is frustrate the people in the field. You want to be consistent, and you want to have a constant data, consistent data all along the way. So if a rep thinks he or she is trending to hit their goal, and then all of a sudden the next month you release numbers that totally distort the previous month's values, now they're not trending toward goal, and it would be very, very frustrating. Incentives and customers. Not all healthcare providers are equal. There are buckets that are taken into consideration for incentive compensation. As we talked about in the targeting lesson, and the chart over here on the right side shows you have a full universe of HCPs in your territory, then you have your targets, and then you have your segments. Your incentive plan can pay associates on the full universe, on the targets, on a certain segment, or a combination of several of these. So it depends upon how the program, the incentive compensation is set up at the beginning of the trimester or quarter. Usually, associates are paid on the full universe of doctors within their territory, but they're only normally calling on targets or segments. So if you have a doctor that's writing your product, but it isn't on your target list, you will still get credit for that for your incentive compensation. Incentive goals. A goal in incentives is much like any other goal you undertake in your life. You want to set the bar to accomplish a certain outcome, and usually the bar for incentives in pharma is based upon the previous incentive cycle. So in the first quarter, if you sold X, in the second quarter you want to sell X plus 1 or X plus 3, whatever it is, you want to get better every single cycle. For incentives, there are usually three types of goals that are set to determine compensation above your base pay. The volume growth goal. This is where you focus on increasing the amount of prescriptions of your brand that are written by your customers, your HCPs. So you want your doctors to write more prescriptions to their patients. Just want to point out that increasing your brand by a lower rate than the market is growing is not attaining your goal. So just because you're growing in volume, if the market is growing at a faster rate, you could still be missing out on your goal. Share growth goal. This is where you focus on growing your brand's market share. Again, a caveat, increasing your share in a shrinking market is not attaining your goal. So if you're getting more and more of a market, but the market is decreasing in size, you aren't hitting your goal. A blended goal is increasing your volume and share simultaneously. Again, these are the three main types of compensation goals that are set for the sales associates at the beginning of every quarter. Just want to point out that maintaining your current volume and/or share in your territory is not a goal. Goals are about increasing your sales. Now, there are things we'll talk about later called incentive contests, where the contest may be just to maintain against a competitor who's eating away or eroding your market share. But for incentive goals, you want to grow your volume and grow your share. Volume growth goal. A volume growth goal is one where you want to increase the volume of the product that you are promoting in your territory. That basically means you want your customers, your healthcare providers, HCPs, to write more prescriptions to their existing patients, which is a total RX, or write prescriptions to new patients, NRX. And as we talked about previously, new RX, only NRX are contained in TRX, total RX, for your incentive cycle. Below is an example. We have 8 doctors listed, and I'm showing my January, February, and March prescriptions that these specific doctors wrote of your product. And during that 3-month period, they wrote 267 prescriptions. That was for the previous incentive cycle. Your current incentive cycle is April, May, and June. When you calculate what they wrote for those months, it's 288 prescriptions. So incentive cycle 1, trimester 1 is 267. Incentive cycle 2 is 288. That is a percent increase of 7.29. So between cycle 1 and cycle 2, you have 7.29% more prescriptions written of your product. Now, before your incentive cycle started, your company published a goal, what your goal is. And what they said was, if you grow your volume by 1%, you'll receive $10,000 in additional compensation for that incentive cycle. If you grow your volume by 5%, you'll receive $20,000 more in incentive compensation for that specific cycle. And if you grow by more than 10%, your volume by 10%, you will receive $50,000 in additional compensation for that cycle. In this example over here, this individual went 7.29%, which is right above the 5% growth and below the 10% growth. So they would receive an additional $20,000 in compensation for that incentive cycle. Share growth goal. A share growth goal is one where you want to increase the share of the product that you are promoting in your territory, so your share of the market. This can be done in 2 ways. One way is to have your healthcare providers write more of your product, or they could write less of your competitor's product. And that would be for whether it's a total RX or a new RX incentive cycle, whatever the goals are, whatever the rules are. So in the example below, our incentive cycle is based upon total prescriptions written, the total RX written by our doctors. And we have a very, very small territory, just 8 doctors here. But you can see from January through March, my customers wrote 39 prescriptions. The entire number of prescriptions written for the market was 128. That means my competitors' scripts plus my scripts is 128. So 39 divided by 128, I have a 30.4.7% market share. The current trimester, April through June, I had 48 scripts written to my product, 130 written in total. So 48 divided by 130 is 36.92. So I had a percent increase of 6.45. And if I look at my goal, a percent increase of 6.45 means that I make $20,000 additional dollars for this incentive cycle. Blended growth goal. This is a process where you take components of the volume growth and share growth and put them together. Most incentive goals are set up this way so you can grow both your volume and your share. And the main reason is because looking at either one of these components by themselves may not mean you're increasing your market and selling more of your product. For example, if you're selling 2 times more product this cycle versus last cycle, but the market's growing at a 3 times rate, you are not increasing your overall volume. Your competitors are outpacing you. The share growth, same model. If you're increasing your share, but the market is shrinking, you are not growing either. The old buggy whip example, that if you're the last buggy whip maker as buggies are going away and automobiles are coming in, you could be the best buggy whip maker ever and you're increasing your share at almost 100%, but the overall market is shrinking to next to nothing. So it's very, very important with a blended goal to look at both volume growth and share growth. And if you're a sales associate and your volume and share are both going up, you're moving in the right direction. Incentive contests. So in addition to your incentive goals and your incentive payout based upon those goals, there's also something called incentive contests. Incentive contests are set up as competitions between sales associates to achieve a certain outcome. Usually the brand management team will allocate a specific amount of money to be distributed among the associates based on how the contest goes. Contests are limited in time, lasting between 3 and 6 months. I've seen some longer, but usually you don't want to go across incentive cycles for an incentive contest. Shorter contests are not realistic because of the volatility and collection methodology of the sales data from vendors. As we discussed previously, your incentive grade data is usually monthly data, so running contests based on weekly data or a short contest is not really a good idea. It's too volatile. While incentive goals are usually set for longer periods of time, incentive contests are meant to quickly correct a problem or take advantage of a situation in the market. Like, for example, if one of your competitors' products has been pulled from the shelves and you want to quickly go out there and take advantage of that, or your product got a new indication approved by the FDA, you want to take advantage of that as well. Rules and payout tiers need to be well defined before the contest starts. Just like with incentive goals, you want to have well-defined rules before it starts to avoid problems down the line. Incentive contest payouts. So payouts happen in various ways depending upon what the brand team decides. One method is all or nothing. Only one sales associate per district or region will receive a payout. So you either win or you lose. If you win, you get everything. Otherwise, you get nothing. Another method is top percent. Sales associates finishing in the top X percent of territories in the district or region receive a payout. So, for example, if it's a 10% contest, anybody finishing in the top 10% receives a payout. Anybody not in that top 10% will receive nothing. A tiered payout. Sales associates ranked based on the outcome and fund distribution is weighted higher toward those individuals who perform better. So you basically have a tier system like a meritocracy. The better you do, the more money you make. The less you do, the less money you make. And that's another method. While nearly all sales associates receive some compensation for their incentive goals, only a few will fare well in contests. And this is an important point this is something important to point out, is that you want these contests to really, really light a fire under your reps, under your associates, to get out there and push and really promote your products. Contest payouts can be substantial depending upon how much money the brand teams decide to allocate for these contests. Incentive contest questions. What questions need to be answered after a contest is complete? Was the contest a success? Did you achieve your overall goal? What was your goal? Did you achieve it? Were the results better or worse than expected? What did you plan on happening and what did happen? Did the growth exceed the compensation payout? In other words, if you paid out more for the contest than you actually grew, then it wasn't a success because you're actually just giving away money to the sales associates, but you really didn't grow your product enough to cover the cost of the contest. Who were the top performers? What criteria was used to determine who your top performers were? And what parts of the country are most susceptible to market fluctuations? Some segments of the country are more susceptible to fluctuations based upon climate and based upon living conditions as well. And finally, principles of fairness. The same rules would apply for an incentive contest as your incentive goals. You don't want to skew the results toward larger territories or toward major cities that have more healthcare providers, more customers. You have to make sure that you're fair in how you set up your contest, just like you would with anything else in incentives. So you keep your sales associates motivated, and they know that if they do a good job, they are going to be compensated accordingly. Now we'll discuss some different types of contests. A buster contest. A buster contest is where a brand will focus on a specific competitor. This is not always the market leader or the top brand or product, but it's usually a product that is similar to your own or is vulnerable. So the expression is a certain brand eating your lunch. Basically, if you have a brand that's beating you, and it's similar to what your brand does as far as what condition or ailments it treats, there may be a buster contest where you specifically target that competitor's product in your calls. Sales associates will be given a subset of healthcare providers in their territories that are writing a significant amount of scripts of the specific competitor product. The associates will deliver a customized message to the HCP detailing why their product is better than the competitor product. This presentation will differ from the generic message that is usually delivered to the HCPs. One thing you have to keep in mind that you never ever want to have your sales associates relay a misleading or inappropriate message about the competitor's product. It has to be factual, has to be based upon data. You have to explain why your product is better than the competitors. And again, in a buster contest, you're not talking about why your product is better in the entire market or therapeutic class. You're saying, my product is better than product A sold by this competitor for these reasons. So HCP, so customer, please write our product instead. So in this contest example, our product is Bestator and the competitor we're trying to quote bust is Worstator. And this is how we would have a payout winner by geography. So in the example, we have four regions. We have Central, South, East, and West. So we're going to have one winner from every region based upon this contest rules before it started. And just to look at our winners, you can see in the Central Cleveland territory by Associate Davis, in the month of January, they were at a -26, meaning that our competitor, Worstator, had 90 prescriptions written in the territory, and Bestator, our product, only had 64. So we're at -26. In the month of February, Bestator went to 95 scripts, and Worstator went to 78. That's a net change of 17 for that specific territory, an overall change of +43, going down from -26 up to 17. So that rep did a really, really good job. They would be the winner in the Central Division. In Atlanta, Sales Associate Jones did a very good job, went from -24 to +40 from January to February. They were the South winner. Now, also in the South, we had an Orlando territory. Representative Jennings, they went from 2 to 28 for a net change of 26, which is very, very good. They finished third overall in the nation. However, the contest rules say this was going to be a winner by geography. So every single region, Central, South, East, and West, would have one winner. In the Philadelphia territory, Representative Peter had 24 as a result, a +24, going from 9 to 33. He or she was the East winner. And then finally in the West region, Denver, Associate Phillips went from -5 up to 14 for a total change of 19. So you can see some of these sales associates were left out, even though they finished higher than the West. They were left out because it was a winner by geographies contest. Now, if we had a winners overall contest, you would see how the top performers finished 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the country, and you had 1 from the Central, 2 from the South, and 1 from the East. So nobody from the West region won. So if you defined your contest to start with as a winners overall versus a winners by geography, that's how you determine your contest winners. Another type of contest is known as a growth contest. A growth contest is much like your core long-term growth goals. Share growth, volume growth, or a blended contest that addresses both types. Contests, however, are short-term and addressing a specific challenge or market event. So if a competitor's brand is going generic, for example, that will create a hole in the branded market that you may want to capitalize and grow your brand and grow your share and volume into. A brand team will want to capitalize on this market event and quickly grab as much share as they can of the competitor who is exiting the market. As with Buster contests, a subset of healthcare providers in your territory, in their territories, the reps' territories, will be targeted in hopes that they can flip prescription habits from competitor products to your own products. So normally this subset of doctors is just a subset of your already existing target list. So you target the subset of those doctors and you want to try to flip the prescribing habits of the HCP, your customer, from competitor products to your products during the contest. Sustained contests. Sustained contests are purely defensive in nature. A launch project may be taking large chunks of volume and share because they are the shiny new penny and the competitor is dumping a ton of money into marketing and sales. So whenever a product is launched, the brand team for that product in your company or your competitor's company spends a lot of money up front because they're trying to recoup all the money they spent to bring the product to market. So you when you launch, you really go crazy with marketing and sales at that point in time. So if you're in the market already and a competitor is launching into your market, you go into a defensive mode many times. So you're trying to fend them off because a lot of HCPs may say, hey, here's the shiny new penny effect, here's the new product, let me see what's going on with that. Now, many HCPs may also say, I've been prescribing your product, your company's product, for many years and I'm happy with it. But this contest is to avoid your share being eroded and your volume being eroded. It doesn't have to be a new product. There could be an existing product out there that was approved for a new indication. For example, if your product treats individuals ages 12 and up and your competitor's product treats individuals 18 and up, and suddenly your competitor got the approval to go to 12 and up, now they have a new indication, so you have to now compete with them for the younger age group as well. And lastly, if your product is near the end of its patent protection life cycle and you want to maintain as much share as you can until generics begin eroding your share. So if your product's coming off patent, there's going to be generic drugs out there that are going to knock you off because they reverse engineered your chemical compound. They know what's in there. And now they're taking that product and making a generic product out of it. And it's going to be a lot cheaper than your branded product. So in this case, you want to sustain your sales and your volume all the way to the end until your product is off patent to make sure you get as much sales out of that life cycle as possible. Just want to give a sustained contest example. In this example, it's going to show how some contests can have 2 or more payouts in one contest. So here we have a sustained contest. So in this, as we talked about before, you want to either stay the same or grow your volume and or share from month to month or period to period, whatever the contest rules are. So between January and February, you can see the sales associates in the different parts of the country that either stayed positive or at 0 versus those who didn't. And the ones who stayed positive received the payout, and the ones who did not receive a payout. Then we ran the same contest for March and April, and those who stayed positive received the payout, and those who were negative did not receive a payout. So you can see that Representative Day out of the Chicago territory did receive a payout for the first 2 months, but did not for the second 2 months. You can see Representative Johnson didn't receive a payout in either of the 2 pay periods. And then you can see how Representative Park received payouts in both pay periods. So this is how you can run a contest where you break it up to allow the reps that are not having a good time in the first half to go ahead and receive a payment in the second half. But again, with the sustained contest, it is you want to stay greater than or equal to what your volume was for the previous month to sustain your volume or sustain your share. Sales apportionment. Many healthcare providers have multiple calling locations, and some of these locations are in different territories that have different sales associates. So a doctor may have 2 calling locations in the city of New York. One is at a hospital, one's a private practice, and they're actually in 2 different territories. When an HCP writes a product, there's no way of allocating the sale to a specific territory or specific associate. The sale gets allocated to the HCP, so not the calling location. So how do you know who gets credit for the sale? Well, there's two methods of allocating the sale. The first one is full apportionment, where the associate receives full credit for the scripts that were written by the HCP. So any associate calling on that doctor will receive full credit for that script that's written. The other method is multi-apportionment. That's where the scripts are tallied and divided by the number of territories in which the HCP has a calling location. So if the healthcare provider wrote 10 scripts of a specific product and you have 2 sales associates calling on that doctor in multiple territories, each associate would get credit for 5 scripts each. Most pharma companies have moved to the full apportionment model to eliminate complexity in how scripts are handled and who gets credit for what, and also to avoid fraud that's associated with multi-apportionment. Although multiple associates may receive incentive credit for the same script, this script total is deduped at the district, region, area, and national levels to get a true sales count. We'll go over deduping in the next slide, but it's important to be aware that you do not want to overrepresent or underrepresent the number of scripts that an HCP, your customer, writes. And at each individual level, you don't want to overrepresent or underrepresent the total scripts in the territory, district, region, or area. And here's an example of that right now. So you'll see in the South region, Dr. Wilson has a calling location in North Atlanta and one in South Atlanta. And Associate Jones and Associate House call on that doctor. And the best tour volume for Dr. Wilson is 20 total scripts, 20. So each associate in full apportionment is going to get credit. Associate Jones and Associate House each get full credit of 20 and 20. However, the Atlanta District Manager Michaels is going to show a total of 20 for this doctor, not 40, because you don't want to have these numbers multiplied as you go up the chain. Multi-apportionment will look like this. Since Associate Jones and Associate House are both calling on Dr. Wilson, they would receive 10 each, and the district would show 20. So those are the different ways, and again, full apportionment is the way the majority of pharma companies are going now. Thank you. This is the end of Lesson 10. There will now be a 10-question quiz.